Ekabo, and welcome to the very first episode of TalkingIFA with me, Babalawo Salako Awolola. Today's topic will be, what is IFA? Okay, we're going to talk about what is IFA. But before I get started, I want to say who these episodes are targeted to. So here on this channel, we want to target and help those who are new to the religion, or they want to learn about the religion and come into the religion. And so that's who we're targeting. Not necessarily people who have already been in the religion for years, just people that are new. So, in saying that, what is IFA? Let's get started.
Greetings. I'm Babalawo Salako. I was initiated as a priest of Ifa and Obatala in Nigeria in 2006, and I've been practicing the Ifa Òrìsà religion for over 30 years now. My mission is simple: to help those who are new to the religion or lost in the religion. So if that's you, then buckle up and join me. This is Talking IFA.
So the first thing I want to do before we get into what is IFA, let's talk about what is African religion in general. Okay, so what is IFA falls within the umbrella of an African religion or African traditional religion or indigenous religion. That I'm talking about the religions or spiritual practices that were there before Western religions like Christianity and Islam. Okay, so that's what we're going to delve into today. So I was looking at this definition in Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't agree with everything in it, but I just wanted to go through. They had 4 points that they made, and I'll point out some of the things I disagree with, but I'm just going to go through that right quick. So the first one goes like this. Generally speaking, African religions hold that there is one creator God, the maker of a dynamic universe. Myths of various African peoples relate that after setting the world in motion, the supreme being withdrew and he remains remote from the concerns of human life. Okay, so, kind of iffy on one creator God. That doesn't necessarily hold in all African religions, and not the one that I'm going to talk about today, which is based out of the Yoruba people of West Africa. And a dynamic universe, yes. It says myths of varying African peoples relate that. So they want to relegate African religion or spiritual practices as myths, but they don't relegate the other religions as myths, okay? But that's just one thing. It says the supreme being withdrew. Now, we're going to get into that a little bit too. In African religions, it's not necessarily a supreme being. We will say the high God or the highest, or like a high God is not necessarily called a supreme being, okay? There can be differences. We'll learn about that a little later. And he remains remote from the concerns of human life. Now that does apply. The quote-unquote high God in the religion that I'm going to talk about, the Yoruba religion, is remote from humans. It's not some entity that you pray to and you make offerings to or anything like that. Okay. Number 2, despite the general belief in a supreme being, cults to the high God, see they said high God here, are notably absent from many African religions. Prayers of petition or sacrificial offerings are directed towards secondary divinities who are messengers and intermediaries between the human and sacred realms. Okay. So basically what that second one is saying, that even though they have a high deity, or you say, quote, God, they don't necessarily directly worship the high God in African religions. They don't deal directly with that entity. They deal with other entities, other divinities or spiritual beings, but they don't deal directly. And that is the case in the traditional religion, spiritual practice that was born out of the Yoruba people in West Africa. Number 3, African religions emphasize maintaining a harmonious relationship with the divine powers, and their rituals attempt to harness cosmic powers and channel them for good. Okay, I agree with that. Ritual is the means by which a person negotiates responsible relationships with other members of the community, with the ancestors, with the spiritual forces of nature, and with the gods. Okay, I don't have too many problems with that one. So the last one, they said, ancestors also serve as mediators by providing access to spiritual guidance and power. Death is not a sufficient condition for becoming an ancestor. Only those who lived a full measure of life, cultivated moral values, and achieved social distinction attain this status. Okay, that's also, I agree with that one. So in the religious practice that I'm in, that I will be discussing here through this podcast, that is true. We call them the honored ancestors, meaning your goal in the afterlife is to become an honored ancestor. One, like here, you've achieved social distinction, attained this status, you've lived a full measure of life, meaning you've had real good things you've done in your life for people, accomplished things, and cultivated moral values. Okay, these are some of the conditions for becoming an honored ancestor. If you fail to become an honored ancestor, then you have the negative ramifications that can occur. But I won't get into that here. So that's just a quick overview in general of African religions, and they're all, when they say that, there's the Ashanti, there's the Dogon, the Zulu, all over Africa, there's, hundreds of thousands of ethnic groups, and they have their own spiritual practices, but there's some things in common. They all honor their ancestors, right? Some have other divinities that they also work with in addition to their ancestors. Some don't. Some just deal with ancestors or human spirits. Some deal with that and divinities. But one thing that's common, they all honor their family. They honor their ancestors, okay? So, next thing, IFA. So I'm talking about IFA. This podcast is Talking IFA. The topic here is, what is IFA? So let's start out. What do I mean by IFA? Now, if you do a lot of research online and you talk to a lot of people, you'll see different definitions. You'll see divisions between IFA and Òrìsà practices in some cases and all of that. So let me be clear on what I'm talking about so we can be on the same page. When I say IFA, it means a lot of things, but one of the things that I'm talking about is like an umbrella for the entire religion. So when I say my religion is IFA, I practice IFA, I mean many things, but one of the things I mean is that I practice this IFA Òrìsà spiritual tradition and religion, okay? And I'm calling it IFA, right? So that's what I would say when I'm saying it, right? So when I say IFA, I'm including all of the subsets, or I may say denominations, kind of like denominations. And if you would look at Christianity, for instance, you have denominations. You had the Catholic Church, and then part of it split off to the Protestant Church, which are the Protestants, and then they split into Methodists and Baptists and Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses and all of that. So those are all denominations of that religion, and they all have some things in common, and they have some things that they differ. So in our religion, when slavery came and it had to spread, It started off in Africa, in Yoruba land, and it was practiced, certain way. Then when certain people were caught and brought into slavery to the West, and some of them brought the religion, for the most part, they didn't bring the entire religion. So if you had somebody who was a priest of, say, Oshun or Batala or whoever, they were brought into slavery. So in the area, they started bringing in a religion. They're going to practice worshiping that Òrìsà, and then they'll try to bring in some of the other Òrìsà, but that's what they're going to practice. But if they're not an Ifa priest, they can't bring Ifa because, there's a lot more training and things you have to know to do Ifa. If you're another priest that's not Ifa priest, you don't know all the things an Ifa priest knows for Ifa, so that would be devoid in the way that it's practiced in that area. So that's partially why there's so many differences, and then there was influences from Christianity and other things, but I'll get into that later. But some of the quote-unquote denominations in our religion would be Isheshe, which is now the term used for the one that I practice and the one that comes out of Africa and tied more to the traditional way of practicing religion. There's Lukumi, Candomblé, Santeria, Shango Baptist, a lot of different ones, okay? That's just some. But when I say Ifa, I'm having an umbrella over all of those. I'm saying I'm practicing the Ifa religion. And the denomination that I'm focused on is Isheshe. But I've practiced in the past mixtures with Isheshe and Lukumi, etc. But primarily what I'm doing now is Isheshe, okay? So that's just kind of a high level Ifa, but let me get into some of the actual detailed definitions of Ifa. What is an official definition of Ifa? I'm going to use these definitions that are from Babalawo Kola Abimbola of Ifa University. So he says Ifa is an academic discipline. Now, in other words, it has a lot of parts to it, and the religious part is a subset of the whole. The religion doesn't make up all of it. Ifa is very vast. But so let's look at here. So he has 6 listed. Number 1, Ifa is known as Orunmila, and some say Orunmila, especially if you're in Cuba or somewhere they say Orunmila. But Orunmila is the divinity of Ifa. So the names are interchangeable. So if I say I consulted with Ifa or a hand of Ifa, the divinity with that is Orunmila. Okay, so I could call Orunmila Ifa, Orunmila interchangeable. So one definition of Ifa is Orunmila, the deity of Ifa. Okay, number 2, Ifa as the divination process, Ifa Dida or Ifa divination, okay? So Ifa has its own specific divination process that has been categorized as a kind of a world treasure of Ifa divination, but you can be talking about Ifa divination and just call it Ifa for short, okay? Number 3, Ifa is a body of knowledge, also called the Ifa literary corpus, okay? These are the sacred scriptures of Ifa in our religion. We call them Odu Ifa, okay? And these scriptures are so vast. It is, so the Odu, or our sacred scriptures, has 256 Odu, okay? So you could think of those as like 256 chapters to a book. In each of those chapters, there are 800 poems, or you might say 800 verses or poems to each of the 256, okay? So if you tried to compile all of that in books, it would be a library full of encyclopedias just to get all that there. No one knows all 800 poems per per Odu, and many of them now, in this time, have been lost due to the major attacks on our religion by other religions like Christianity and Islam. But in general, that's what it was originally, okay? And that's number 3, okay? So that's our sacred scriptures. They can also be called Ifa, okay? Number 4, Ifa as essay. Any poem from any of the books or Odus of the sacred scriptures, the essay, when I say there's 800 poems, each poem is called an essay, and that essay is also can be called Ifa, right? So you say, I'm reciting Ifa, or Ifa said this, etc. Number 5, Ifa as a special herbal mixture or talisman for medicinal purposes. So they a lot of times may call that Ifa medicine. So in Ifa, there's spiritual medicine that are provided for clients, right? So you can do divinations, you can also do Ifa medicine. There are some Ifa priests that don't divine, they just do medicine. There's some that only divine, etc. Some do both. But that Ifa medicine is also called Ifa. You can just call it Ifa, right? And number 6, Ifa as Ifa incantations or powerful words. So chanting Ifa, and there's some chants that are considered incantations of their power. In this practice, religious practice, the power of the word is very, very powerful. What is said, what comes out of your mouth, what you put into the universe is very, very powerful. And that's something that we believe in here, this religion. That is that definition of Ifa. Now let's go on to the general belief system and what I call the cosmology of the religion, okay? So Ifa cosmology, I'm going to go through the one from Baba Kola Abimbola. It was first brought to us by his father, the Awishe Agbaye Baba Wande Abimbola. But I'm going to go off of one. I'm looking here at this diagram that Baba Kola created from that, okay? So if you think about the cosmos in what we believe in our religion, think about 2 halves of the universe, and you could think of it as a big circle or oval or just 2 halves. If you don't want to make it a circle, however you want to look at it. But let's just imagine a big circle. And you have the right side and the left side. So basically the right side is considered the good side. That's where the good and positive entities and forces reside. The left side is considered the negative or bad or evil side. And on that side, there are negative forces that reside. So on the right, you will have what's called the Òrìsà. You have humans, animals, nature, ancestors, etc. on the right. On the left, we have what's called the Ajogun, okay? And altogether, some call the Orunmila, there are 600, right? So there's 600 entities that came to, that are here on Aye, that came from Orun. Orun, some people consider Orun like heaven or something like that. Some don't, but Orun. 400 plus 1, but the 400 of those original are called Òrìsà. 200 are the Ajogun, okay, that reside on the left. The Òrìsà are the good forces that are there to try to help us in life and fight for us and protect us. They fight against the Ajogun, whose mission is to constantly war against us, war against humans, war against the Òrìsà, right? There are 8 the 8 primary Ajogun, or they call warlords. Number 1 is Iku, 2 Arun, Iku death, 2 Arun illness, 3 Ofo loss, 4 Egba paralysis, 5 Oran big trouble, 6 Epe curse, 7 Ewan imprisonment, and then 8 Eshe are basically all other afflictions. All other afflictions that afflict humans can fall under that, and the rest of the 200, right? So those are the 8 primary warlords on the left, and again there are 400 Orisha on the right. Now you might see online 401 or 201. There's not really 401. There's 400. It's 400 plus 1 or 200 plus 1. The plus 1 just means expansion. So this religion is open to expand and welcome other deities. It's not the type of religion that says, oh, our way is the only way and all other religions are wrong and ours is, we just practice our religion and we respect all other religions, okay? So, for instance, in Brazil or in South America, there's some forms of the religion, I think it's one of them, I think it's Mukumbu or something, I can't remember the exact name, so I don't want to mess it up, where they've integrated with the Orisha some American or Native American deities into their practice, right? So they worship the Native American deities along with the African deities in their religious practice. So that's why I said there are different denominations, and when you come to, if you want to join a religion, you have to kind of do some research and find out which one you want to join, okay? So that is and then at the top, of course, we have Olodumare, the high god, Olodumare. Some have another name, Olorun. But Olorun, to me, could also be a title, because Olorun means owner of Orun, like a title, Olor of Orun, or owner of heaven. So I think the primary name is Olodumare, right, for the high god or deity. Now, in our religion, Olodumare is not considered an Orisha. Olodumare is only in the spiritual form. Olodumare is not female or male. So I've seen something the other day on Facebook where they were trying to say Olodumare is part of the divine feminine, is a feminine energy and all that. No, that's not true. Olodumare is not male or female. It's not male or female energy. It's kind of like both, yin and yang. It's a spirit only. It has no human representation or human form. Okay, so Baba Kola says that Orun was created in the beginning by 4 deities, 4 entities: Olodumare, Obatala, Ifa Rumula, or Ifa, and Eshu. And he calls those the eternal 4, meaning they've always been here, they were never created, right? And those 4 together created Orun and the rest of the Orisha, okay? They call them the eternal 4. Then we have all the other Orisha. So let me read a little of the definition here that they have. The Yoruba believe that the world is divided into 2 planes of existence: Aye, the earth, and Orun, the abode of the supernatural. Olodumare, the high god, with the assistance of 3 divinities, namely Eshu, Ifa, and Obatala, created Orun. The original Orisha, i.e. divinities excluding Olodumare, but including Eshu, Ifa, and Obatala, who are 400 in number, descended from Orun on an iron chain into Ile-Ife. Ile-Ife was the original sacred city, and it is still the sacred city and heart of our religion, Ile-Ife in Yoruba land in Nigeria, where they created and founded the earth and its inhabitants. Okay, this is from Babakola Abimbola. According to Ifa, the sacred scriptures of Yoruba religion, the religion has a pantheon of 600 plus 1, not 601, supernatural powers. Ifa identifies two main categories of these powers. 400 primordial supernatural powers on the right, and the 200 primordial supernatural powers on the left. Okay. Now, so we've talked about what is Ifa. We've covered that. So let's just look at an example. I have an example here I found of, and it applies to people that find the religion or coming new to the religion. I just wanted to share an example I found online. This was from NPR, and it's an article that was entitled Ancient African Religion Finds Roots in America. And this was on August 25th, 2013, if you want to go and do a search and look it up. Here, this says, in the suburbs of Seattle, an ancient West African religion is gaining followers. Yoruba, from the Yoruba people of Nigeria, has been spreading across the U.S. for the last 50 years. The religion is particularly popular with African Americans who find it offers a spiritual path and a deep sense of cultural belonging. Okay, and so in this article, they said, looking for answers. Wesley Hurt's Yoruba story begins the night he met his wife, Cherry Prophet. It was nearly 8 years ago, not long after a tour in Iraq. He had just gotten off for a weekend release from an army base in Tacoma, Washington. Hurt was ready to go out and have a good time. He and some friends went to a club where he saw Prophet, etc. Anyway, they bonded quickly over food, politics, and religion. These two seekers were constantly rethinking their relationships to the divine. With my mother, we were Jehovah's Witnesses, we were Pentecostals, we were Baptists, we were Seventh-day Adventists, Prophet says. It did not work for me. Hurt had been a Southern Baptist for most of his life, and a lot of things had brought me to try to find my spirit, he says. So, of course, you start off in church asking questions, and, I didn't get the answers that I wanted. So Hurt, a 32-year-old Atlanta native, started exploring first Judaism, then Islam. He was looking for something that spoke to his spirit and to his blackness. About 2 years ago, he found a home in one of Yoruba's esoteric branches called Ifa. So in this article, they're calling it Ifa. Okay. What brought me to Ifa is that how close this tradition is linked to us as African Americans in this country, he says. This feeling is familiar to many Black Americans who practice Yoruba today, just as it did with those who have been practicing for years. In New York City in the 1950s, African American Yoruba communities began to grow alongside a surging Black nationalist movement. For several decades, the religious tradition spread down the East Coast and westward to Chicago, Oakland, LA, and to Seattle area, where Hurt met an Ifa priest named Ifa Bemi. Okay, so that was just a story I wanted to share with you. I found about some people and their travels and how they arrived at Ifa. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, okay, so what do you worship in Ifa? What do we really worship in Ifa? Okay. So first of all, let me look up a definition, just a definition that I found of what does it mean to worship, right? So here's a few definitions. Worshiping God means acknowledging and celebrating, quote unquote, his power and perfection in gratitude. 2, worship means respectful devotion, loving, honoring, and obeying someone who deserves our highest regard. Okay. 3, worship includes understanding and awe of God's holiness. We remember how great he is and behave reverently in his presence. These definitions come more from a Christian perspective. The question that you would ask in Ifa is, do we really worship? And if we do, is it the same or is it different? I would argue that it is definitely different, a little different than Christianity. And in some ways of looking at it, it might be difficult to say that we, quote unquote, worship deities. We honor deities. We access deities that can, and entities that can help us in our life path. We show gratitude. We basically pay. There's a concept that we have is that you have to pay for everything in life. Everything you get in life, you have to pay for. And that means you always pay money. You may pay time, sacrifice. You may pay by going through trials and tribulations. You may make mistakes and, pay for it that way. But you pay for everything that you get in life. So when we approach the Òrìsà, for instance, or the ancestors, we honor them. We can praise them. We give them offerings as an exchange for asking them to do something for us. We don't just ask them only and just pray to them and ask them just to do all these things for us out of love for us. And that's different than in Christianity. We don't base it on, do you love me? Please do this for me just because you love me. We go in and say, I'm asking you to do this for me. What do you want from me to do for you? And then when you tell me, the Òrìsà tells you what they want from you, then you try to give them that, and then you do your prayers in honor and respect for them, and then you expect for them to then help you in exchange. So our focus isn't just worship. Our focus isn't just faith. Our religion is more of a practice-based religion. It's not necessarily a faith-based religion. We don't just go into it having faith and belief. Because what happens here is, and if you're interested in coming in this religion, you'll find this out. In our religion, it's results-based. It's practice-based, meaning if you're going to get divinations from a diviner and it doesn't work for you, you're not seeing any benefit in your life and nothing's happening for you, then you're going to stop going. So a Babalawo like myself, when we go out and do work for people, we have to produce results, or guess what? We won't have any clients. We don't try to use scaring people to death and, if you don't come and do stuff for me, then you're going to hell, or you're doing this and other. You come to us for help, we try to help you, and then you're the one that sees if there's results for you. And then what happens is, if you start seeing results like, oh, wow, these things are working for me, then guess what? You're going to keep coming back to that diviner or that Babalawo or that Òrìsà priest for help, because you're finding out that they're able to help you, right? You're seeing the things happen. You're seeing miracles happen. You're seeing benefit. So we're all results-based in this religion. It's not a faith-based religion. So I'm a little shaky on the word worship. It's not. You could say we worship in the sense of if you want to receive an Òrìsà and you have that Òrìsà in your home, then you do worship that Òrìsà too. Like you go and do prayers to the Òrìsà, but you also make offerings to the Òrìsà, right? You learn things about that Òrìsà to honor that Òrìsà. Okay. So, but we do have forms of worship, right? But who in our religion do we primarily worship? Okay. Do we worship Olódùmarè? Is Olódùmarè the primary one we worship? No, because we don't do prayers to Olódùmarè. We don't do offerings to Olódùmarè. We don't do dances and drumming or anything to Olódùmarè. So you can't define it per se that we're worshiping Olódùmarè like a Christian would worship Jehovah or whoever they call God, or a Muslim would worship Allah. We don't worship Olódùmarè that way, okay? So we can't say that's the primary entity that we worship. Do we worship the Òrìsà or the ancestors? Again, that's shaky. So like some people say we do ancestor worship. I would push back on that because we do ancestor veneration. We venerate our ancestors, meaning, see, this is one of the other differences in this religion in Ifa is that we, and not just Ifa, in African spiritual traditions and just culture in general that's different from European, is in the African concept, you acknowledge what exists in the world, right? Both material and spiritual. We acknowledge what exists. We don't run from it and say it doesn't exist because we think it's evil or bad. And because in our cosmology we identify the Ajogun on the left, doesn't mean we worship the Ajogun. It just means we acknowledge that they exist. So what in African concept is, if something exists in the world or in nature, then we have to find out how we can exist alongside it, how we can remain here on Aye, on Earth, and we can exist, and we won't go extinct because something else is here. We just have to say, okay, we have this thing or this obstacle or this roadblock. We need to learn how to live in harmony or, live with these things, and we don't ignore that they're there, okay? The other thing is, because we acknowledge all entities that are around, then we say, okay, if we have this one over here that can help us, oh great, we can get that one to help us. If we got this one, if we got 7 different ones that can help us, if we got 10 or 20, we can go to all 20 and ask for help. There's no limit. Why do we have to only ask one? Whereas in some other religions, they just worship this, one God and that's it. And they look at any other entity as evil or doesn't exist, or they want to destroy it. And like, for instance, Baba Wande Abimbola was telling me that all Europeans through history have done that. What they do is anybody that was not a Christian, for instance, they label as a witch and they try to destroy him. So anybody who practices any kind of other religious practice than Christianity or nature-based or anything like that, they're automatically categorized as witches, and they practice witchcraft and they're evil and we got to kill them and destroy them. And they've killed people accusing of witchcraft for a long time, and they still attack people today. They want to categorize anything anybody does, you're witches, you're practicing witchcraft, you're evil. Okay, but in our religion, we acknowledge that there are witches, there are witchcraft, there are other entities there. So what we say is, okay, they exist, how can we exist alongside of them? And if there's other entities there that can help us, the ancestors can help us, the Òrìsà can help us, right? But if we go to our ancestors for help, we honor our ancestors, we could give them offerings, sing songs to our ancestors. We honor them and we pray that our ancestors help us in the spiritual world like they helped us when they were in the physical world. In the physical world, our family helps us. We want our family to still help us on the spiritual side. That doesn't mean necessarily that we're worshiping our ancestors. We're honoring our ancestors and asking them, hey, help me out. Hey, uncle, you helped me out before. I need your help. Can you help me? Right. Okay, so I wouldn't categorize that as worship. So what do we worship? Okay. Baba Kola Abimbola says we worship character. Character is what we worship. There are some terms like you may have heard of, or you will hear of Iwa Puele, and you may hear of Iwa Lesin, where Iwa Puele means good and gentle character. That means our goal through life and while we're here in Aye is to develop good and gentle character. Iwa Lesin means good character is my religion. Iwa Lesin means good character is my religion. I mean, that's the religion we're practicing. We worship character. Now, let me just have let me just say one thing, though. Not everybody that you're going to meet that practices religion are upholding that value. And a lot of people out here practicing, and you may run into some, or you may run into a house or a group where they don't really ever talk about Iwa Puele. They're not focused on Iwa Puele. They may be focusing just on, they feel like I have spiritual freedom. I can do whatever I want to do. They're not worried about character. I would caution against joining those kind of places, but they do exist. So don't feel that you're going to just go out there and anybody you meet, say, oh, you practicing Iwa Puele and everybody here is in good character. No, there's people in this religion with real bad character, just like they are in any religion. Okay, so don't come in kind of with a utopia type mindset that everybody's good in this religion. You have to still be discerning on who you deal with in this religion, like you'd have to be discerning in any other. But basically, at the end, Iwa Lesin, good character is our religion. Okay, so that's episode 1. I wanted to wrap that up. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, my name is Babalawo Salako Awolola, and this is Talking IFA. So I want to go more in depth on the next episode. The next episode is entitled, How Can I Join the Ifa Òrìsà Religion? So for those of you, again, who we're targeting that are new to the religion and you may be considering joining, you want to get some guidance on how to do that, and you don't want to just be totally lost and run, helter-skelter, then I'm here to try to help you with that. So please follow me and join and come and see the next episode when it's released. How can I join the Ifa Òrìsà religion? I thank you very much for your support. Ireo, Ireo, Ireo. Asheo.